would like to briefly introduce my youngest of three sons, Nora Perez. And I'm doing that because this story is not my story, it's our story. I'm similar in the fact that as a young girl, I was in the trenches, so to speak. And it's not because I came from a bad background or had no father, because I had a great father and a great mother. And he was traditional Mexican-American, and we grew up really great. But at 13 years old, my father got into a very tragic car accident, what left him in a coma for quite some time. And with my mother tending to that, the family fell apart. He was our structure. He was our rock. He was the king of our house. And there were 6 girls and 2 twin boys at the end. So with no father figure there, and the structure dissembled, I went looking for somewhere to belong. I was 13 years old. I was hurt. I was in pain. I was lost. I was in the dark. And I found people my age in worse predicaments than I was, and they befriended me. I didn't choose a gang. They kind of chose me. But it didn't start off that way. We were just family. And we related in so many things. And with the anger, I got into fights. And then to suppress the hurt and the pain, I started smoking marijuana. And one thing led to the other. At 15 years old, I was introduced to a very high-ranking gang member. He was 20 years old. At 16, I became pregnant. At 17, I had my first son. At 18, I became pregnant again. At 19, I had 2 sons. By this time, I was not living in the home, but living with him. And that was my life, and that was my family. As time went on, he went to prison. He went to prison for voluntary manslaughter, which was an answered prayer for me. But I was still on my own. My mother would not take me in because of the lifestyle that I was living. I had 2 small children. So the gang actually helped me. They helped me. They bought me couches and TV and furniture for the boys, and that was my family. But as time went on, I noticed that people were dying and people were going to jail, and I had my 2 little, what I called them my little cubs, that I'd see them rolling around and playing with one another, and I could not have one of them going to jail or burying one. So I slowly got out of that. Just little by little, I went to a small computer class, and I got a small job, and I just, detached from that. And things started to work out. I got married, had 2 more children, and it seemed like everything was okay until my son hit the 8th grade. And it seemed like the bullying began. And he was running home back and forth to school. I walked the hallways with my son. I went to the administrative office. I did police reports. I did everything I thought a mother should do. We did not allow my son to walk back and forth to school anymore. We could not do it. But it seemed like I could not help him. And there was no help. There was no one who was willing to hear my cries. And as soon as Javier started to figure out that what he explained to me is like, Mom, what do you want me to do? Either I get bullied or become the bully. And no sooner that Java went, Julius followed, because those 2 were thick as thieves. And Javier was his hero. And it was hard. There was a struggle there within the family. By the time the boys were 18, there was an ultimatum. Look, you follow the rules or you gotta go. It was the worst decision I could have ever made. The boys ran the streets for the next 2 years, 18, 19, and 20. And I prayed for them, and I hoped for them, and I wished for them the same any other mother would. And one day my son calls me, my oldest son, Javier. He says, Mom, can you come get me? Sure, of course I can. Where are you? At the park. Right now? Right now, Mom. I go pick up my son. He gets in the car. He spends 5 glorious days with us. And in those days, he talked about what he wanted to do, how tired he was. He didn't want to live like this anymore. He was so apologetic of not what he's been through, but what he put me through. He talked about going to school and finishing and getting a job and finding a nice girl and getting married. He even knew he was going to have 5 children, 3 boys and 2 girls. He had a boy, girl. He was going to name them all Javier. Yeah. I asked him, I said, how is that going to work out? He said, Javicita and Javita. I said, okay. He had it all worked out. Man, my heart was overjoyed that my son was home. It was an answered prayer, and I knew that if Javo came home, Juju would soon follow. I knew that with all my heart. And we discussed so many things those 5 days. But on that Wednesday, he said, Mom, I gotta go back because Juju's there and I can't leave him. But I'll be home. Will you come get me on Monday? Of course I will. And Monday was my day off. You come, you pick me up, I'm coming home, and I'm gonna start a new life. Of course, I gave him a kiss, I gave him a hug. And I remember that day before he left, I looked at his shirt. I said, do you want a clean shirt? He says, you have clothes for me? Of course I do. Went and grabbed the shirt, put it on him, and it was a little wrinkled. I said, you want me to iron it? He's pulled it down. He said, nope, I'm okay. I embraced my son. And as I held him, he's pretty tall, I could hear his heartbeat in my ear. I give him a kiss and a blessing, and off he goes. And I was so happy. I was at peace. Javier's coming home. That Sunday, I got up. It was a beautiful October day. It was like Indian summer. I opened up the windows. I went in the basement. I cleaned out the basement. I started getting everything ready for them to come home. I pulled out the furniture. I dusted it off, and I thought, let me set it up. No, I'm going to let him set it up the way he'd like to. I get up, I'm done, everything's set, ready for him to come home the next day. I go upstairs, I sit for about 15 minutes, and it was time to get ready for work. I jump in the shower, and I had not even got my hair wet when the phone rang. And my youngest son comes knocking at the door. He says, Mom, Dad's on the phone. Tell Dad I'm getting ready. You know, regular day. I gotta go to work. He says it's important. I get on the phone, and all I hear is, Javo's in the hospital. He got shot. You have to come now. And I thought to myself, no, God, no, one more day. One more day. You said one more day. And I don't remember getting out of the shower. I remember running through the house as I'm screaming and yelling, pray for your brother. Pray for your brother, he got shot. I reached for the door. I don't remember the drive. I remember pulling up and seeing my husband and my second oldest son standing outside. And they're talking. I run up to him. I said, where's my son? And nobody answered me. I said, where is my son? Nobody would answer me. And they take me in this room and they sit me down, and the doctor comes in with a pastor. And I knew what that was. But he sits me down and the doctor explains something to me. And to this day, I cannot tell you what he said. But I looked at him, I said, I don't understand what you're trying to tell me. And he said it a second time. My heart could not register what he was saying. I don't understand what you're trying to tell me. He said it a third time. And something clicked. And I looked at him and I said, are you telling me that my son doesn't have breath? He didn't know what to say. And as my mind started to run 100 miles an hour, I look over at my husband and I said, I can do a lot of things. I can do a lot of things, but this I cannot do. I cannot bury my son. And I heard a little voice in my head, and it said, hold him. Hold your son. Hold him, and all the love that you carry in your heart will transform, and he will be okay. That's what I was supposed to do. I'm his mother. You're supposed to pick him up. You're supposed to give him a kiss, and everything's supposed to be okay. And immediately I got strength inside of me, and I said, where is he? Because I knew I would hold him, and I knew he would be okay. Where is he? And the police officer explained where he was, what he was doing, and said, you can't hold your son. We have to preserve evidence. I can't hold my son. And as my son Julius watched me, because he knew I'd make it better, and he watched me, I see him watching me, I said, I can't hold my son. And I lost hope. At that moment, I lost hope. And they took me into this room bound. Bound, they took me into this room. And I watched him, and he looked sleepy. He had a sheet over, and he was just laying there so peacefully. And the first thing I thought is all I wanted to do was get in that sheet, curl up next to him, and go. I could not imagine another day without my son. And people often ask me, why would I think that? You had 3 other children. For those of you who have more than one child, when one falls, you leave the other because the one fell. And that's the child that needs you. That's the child that you want to make it all better. But I thought about my son Julius. I said, if anybody's gonna hurt just as much as me, it's gonna be him. His brother's gone, his hero. What's gonna happen? So they have me sign my son's body over, which I could not understand. How do I sign my son's body over? They took me out of this emergency room, and my husband kept me in front of the emergency room. He said, I'm gonna get the car. And that day that was so beautiful, that day that was so sunny and so bright, it wasn't that day anymore. Everything was a little dimmer. The sky wasn't as blue, and the grass wasn't as green. And I couldn't understand the cars passing by because my son was not here. So everybody had to pause and stop because he needed to be better. He had to come along with the rest of us, and it wasn't going to happen. It was out of my hands. There was nothing I can do. And as hard as that was, Julius was my main focus. My son put himself in harm's way, and he could not deal with the guilt and the pain of him living and breathing, and his brother was not there. And it was hard. I'm trying to mourn, and I'm trying to keep this son alive. 3 months after my son was shot and buried, my second oldest got shot in the face. And it was a Sunday morning, and I came from church, and I'm laying down in the bed, exhausted, and I get a phone call from a friend who still lived in the neighborhood. And he says, Nora, Julius just got shot. You're a liar. That was my response, you're a liar. He said, I'm watching him get in the ambulance right now. I get up, I grab my shoes, grab my purse, I'm running out of the house, and it was deja vu all over again. Pray for your brother. Pray for your brother. He just got shot. As I'm reaching for that front door, I remembered Javier, and I fell to my knees, and I prayed, God, please, do not take my son. Please, I cannot handle it. I cannot take it. If I'm not there, you're there. If I'm not there, you're there. Do not take my son. I drove there. I see the ambulance. I get out. I run up to the ambulance. I open the doors, and there's blood everywhere. Everywhere. And I was panicking. And I'm looking around, and I'm trying to figure out what is happening. How is this happening again? And I rush into the emergency room, but my son was 19 years old, and they would not let me in. And I'm trying to get in there, and the police officers would not let me in. They're questioning him. And it was the paramedic who came. And she held me, and she says, he's okay. He's okay. okay, he's all right, he's okay. That's all I wanted to know, is he was okay. But the moment they allowed me to come in, I knew that I had to be strong for him. I knew that I couldn't go in there crying and pleading. I knew I couldn't do it. So I walk in, my son's laying there, and he has blood coming out of his mouth, and you see the bullet holes coming out of his face, but his eyes are closed. And I rubbed his hair, and I whispered in his ear, Juju. And he opens his eyes and sees me. And I said, I'm here, and I'm not gonna let anything happen to you. My son started to cry, and I said, it's okay, I'm here. And I kissed him and kissed him. The doctors rushed in, and they needed to work on him because the blood was just constantly coming out of his mouth. They're cleaning him up, and they're putting suction things in his mouth, and they gave me his belongings. So I step out, and the family's waiting in the waiting room, and I'm explaining what's going on and what's happening and what they're doing. And as I'm explaining this to the family, trying to stand there and try to be as strong as possible, I open up the bag of belongings. And I happen to look in, and I started crying. And my sister says, what's wrong? And I said, Juju's wearing Havel shoes. The same pair of shoes that my son wore when he passed, Julius is wearing those shoes. Now I have a pair of shoes with both my son's blood on it. It was horrible. What was I to do? Where was I to go? Who was there to help me? This is an unimaginable thing. So I took my son home, and I catered to him, but my son still had that anger and that hurt and that pain and that grief, and we all did. And he went right back out there and constantly put himself in harm's way. 5 months later, I get a call. I have to leave work. I go to the police station, and the same gentleman that shot and killed my son and shot my other son in the face, there was a gun down. There was a shootout. This time my son had a gun, and one of the other men was shot and killed. 4 men against one, my son. And now he's in prison for murder. Within 7 months, I buried a son and saw a son get shot, and now my son's going to prison for murder. Right now, my son Julius is in Miami Correctional Facility. He's serving a 30-year prison sentence. And we go see him every 2 weeks. And it's hard, but my son is alive. And I get to hold him, and I get to hug him, and I get to kiss him. And the first thing my son Julius told me when I went to visit him the first time, he said, Mom, I'm here, and I'm sorry, but at least I'm here. But where's Havel? Where's Havel? That's all he thought about. That's all we think about. Every day, this does not get easier. It gets harder because birthdays pass and Christmas pass, and you wonder where they would be at in their life. And as I get up every morning, before I stand on my feet, I have to get on my knees because that's the only thing that gets me through. And I walk through the house, and there's a constant reminder with pictures and memories of those lost lives that aren't here anymore. I didn't know what to do. I was lost. And I finally reached out to the Hammond Times because I didn't want another mother to go through what I went through. I don't want another child to get buried or to lose their lives in prison. And they did a story on us. And in that story, 4-day story, it was a chapter every day. And on one of those days, Patrick's organization was on the side, his interview, his story, and I reached out to him. This was a way for me and my family to heal. One of my son's last wishes on those days, he talked about getting better, and he talked about coming back and proving that if he could do it, so can everybody else. He said, Mom, I'm gonna come back, and I'm gonna help them help themselves. I'm gonna be the example. I'm gonna let them know that there's a better life. And being part of this organization, what my purpose here is, I'm living out my son's dream. That's my purpose. My purpose is my son's dream. I'm his voice. I'm his hands, I'm his feet. And I will not allow either one of my son's tragedy to just be forgotten or be a statistic, because they're worth more than that. And it helps us as a family to know that we can prevent a burial. We can prevent one of these children going to jail. And that's why this organization not only has the experience and the knowledge and the wisdom, but we have the desire, the passion, the heart, the love to do this, because we don't see those children the way society sees them. We see ourselves in them. I see my son in those children. Even my son in prison, he says, Mom, I'm gonna get out and I'm gonna come back only to help. He wants to be his brother's voice. And that's what we do. And that's what we'll do every day. We pour our hearts out to these children. And they understand us, they accept us because they know where we've been, where they're at the present time. So while we're reaching out, like you said, it's not for fame, it's not for fortune, it's because children are dying every single day. Mothers are burying their children every single day. It's an unnatural thing for any parent to bury their child. So I'm asking that you take this story and that you share it with people, because you never know what could come knocking on your door. Thank you.